This show is sponsored by ODYS Global. Make sure that you do sign up and get a free $100 bonus by checking out ODYS Global's Age Domains or Done For You affiliate websites. Hi guys, welcome to episode 42 of SEO Tales, and today Itamar and myself are going to be talking about how to price SEO. A common question that people ask: what's the best price? What should I charge? What should this at? What, it's always a common question in groups and on webinars and all that stuff. And Itamar, we're going to have two different perspectives because I'm long in the tooth and I'm old and wrinkly and all that stuff. So I will go last when talking about pricing. But how do you go about pricing now? Obviously, you are newer to the market than me, and finding your feet in the world, dealing with clients, getting new clients on board. But people often say, am I charging too little, too much? And, you are definitely going to have had that going through your head in recent years while you've been doing your own stuff. So what goes on in your head? If a new client comes to you right now, today, how does that go? They say, Itamar, I want SEO. I sell clothing in London. What happens from there? How do you go about even suggesting a figure to these guys?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's really important to mention is that, people need to understand the different types of pricing options that they have available. Because if you're new to the game, you might not be sure, you might not have a clue, right? So there's different types of pricing that you can do. So you can go for an hourly rate, or if you've got a retainer, you can say to a client, you'll do a certain amount of hours a month, and this is the price they'll pay for that month. You can do it for, like an hourly basis. You could do it if it's just like a project basis. You can even do it on a value-based basis, but value-based pricing is definitely harder to do when you're starting out because you don't really know the extent of the value you can bring. But I think for most people, kind of hourly rates are a lot easier. But if I have a client coming to me, the first thing that I ask them is for their budget, because knowing their budget will help me best figure out exactly how much value I can add to this client. So that's always going to be my first question. And once they give me a budget, I can say, like, personally, the way I prefer to do things is I'll either run it through like a retainer basis or an hourly basis, where I kind of dedicate a certain amount of hours per month to do whatever I need to do, and then outline that as like a roadmap, so the client gets an idea in terms of what's going to be done. Now, is that the best approach? I don't know. It's an approach that's working for me fine. I'm not going to sit here and say one approach is better than the other. There are a lot of people who don't like using an hourly approach. I personally just find it very easy to kind of manage my time around that. If I know I'm doing a certain amount of hours every month on a client, it just helps me better manage my time. But yeah, I think, it doesn't matter where you are in the game. I think just the first question should be really, get an idea of the budget that the client has, but also get an idea in terms of how well you can work. And you kind of just got to weigh in different factors. For example, like, even if we take an hourly approach, some of the discrepancies can happen when, there might be someone who in an hour can get a certain thing done, but another person might be able to get that same thing done plus get two more things done in that same hour. So that's where it can sometimes be difficult, because everyone works at slightly different speeds, right? And they can do different things. There's a difference in knowledge, etc. But you just got to get a feel for, how or what you can do as a person, but also don't hesitate to kind of look around and check what other people are pricing their services for. You can take a look at places like Upwork, People Power, even Fiverr if you wanted to do it as like a project basis. But yeah, the first things I would do is just ask for budget and then figure out how I can allocate, my time and value to that client. So Craig, you probably got loads of different perspectives on this. So what do you think about that approach?
Now, I'll give you a couple of different perspectives on it. So one, not that you're doing this, but I hate the package model. Now, people price a lot of stuff up saying, sign up in the £300 a month bronze package, the £600 a month silver package, the £1,000 a month gold package. I don't think you can package things because you know, every niche is different levels of work, different things need done, different things can be broken in a website. And I don't think, you know, I think everything has to be bespoke. Secondly, your approach, I don't personally agree on it. Now, it's fine that, you know, I know a lot of people will use it. I just think that you're probably not selling it properly, because how do you quantify into that hourly rate your costs for tools and everything else? And the whole discrepancy with me is, because you take an hour to do something doesn't mean I can't do it in 20 minutes. So are you really taking an hour? Are you actually just doubling up? And I think that leaves yourself open to a lot of potential either, you know, criticism from the customer, or potentially, if you're tied down to an hourly rate, you could probably be shooting yourself in the foot as well, where the client says, well, I expect 10 hours worth of work. And obviously you're going to justify it and say, this took you an hour, that took you an hour, but you're going to be shafting the client over because it probably only took you 10 minutes to do it. So I think there's a lot of grey areas within the hourly rate. And I also had a client who once said to me, Craig, you're doing amazing work and all that stuff. And I don't know if I've told this story before on here, but it was a lawyer client. He said, you're doing amazing work. We're doing really well. I've got the email and everything, man. It's amazing. So he said, can you come in and see us? So I sat there myself, 3 lawyers, and they're like, doing really well, love the rankings and all that, but we don't understand how many man hours go into doing what you do. And I said to them, I don't understand how many man hours go into you writing a lawyer's letter that you charge £250 for. And he said, but we went to university for 7 years and all that stuff. And it ended up a bit of an argument. But fine, you know, people who have education or experienced SEOs are going to charge more per hour and all that kind of stuff. So there is, again, a lot of discrepancies. But what I basically said to the lawyers was, listen, I'm not a bricklayer or a labourer. I'm justifying my thing hour per hour. Now, we've got link costs, we've got content costs, we've got tool costs, and all of that stuff. Plus, we've also got to make a profit as a business. So the price is this, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else and get another price. You know, that's something you're free to do. But I think, you know, people have to be paid based on their skill level and experience as well. And that's where I think you're potentially shooting yourself in the foot. You know, you've taken time, sat in hundreds of webinars, sat on calls with probably hundreds of people. Now, I don't know what you do on a day-to-day basis in terms of learning and development, but if we look at it over the course of a year, are you actually doing hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of education for yourself? Yes, you are. And should you be charging an hourly rate to a customer, or are they paying you for your experience and education and all that stuff? You've got to go with what the market rate is, you know. And you know, we all know that there's slight discrepancies where people charge £300 a month. Some other guys charge £600 a month. Some guys will charge £1,000 a month. You'll always find that the guys at the higher end of the pay scale actually do a good job. Those people in there charging the £300 and £600 do a half-assed job. And why is that? They just don't have the time or the resources or the budget to do it. So I think, you know, tying yourself down to a client on an hourly rate and potentially shooting yourself in the foot is not the best option for me. I like what you said in terms of asking someone for the budget, but I'm going to play devil's advocate on that because, again, I've done that to clients in the past, and I've said, like, trying to gauge the budget so I can say, right, because listen, we all know that a client can spend £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 on their marketing, and you know, it just means you're going to get more content, more links, more everything if you do have a more substantial budget. However, I've had clients saying, no, I don't want to tell you my budget. I want to see what your pricing is. And they start acting all cagey because it's very easy for an SEO guy to say, right, tell me what your budget is, and we'll figure out what we can do. Knowing full well that if they say their budget's £2,000, you're coming back with a £2,000 a month retainer, regardless. So I think, you know, clients will do that to you as well and not tell you the budget. So if they don't tell you the budget, Itamar, what are you doing?
Well, to be honest, this is something that I've heard from Ross Tavendale, where he said before he goes into a pitch, he'll go on something like dodeal.com or something and figure out, you know, kind of get some figures about the company, and especially if it's a larger client. And then that way you can kind of go to them and say, well, you know, how much did you spend on marketing last year? And then you kind of figure out based on their revenues, you can say, well, if you allocated 10% of your revenues to marketing, you would have X amount of money to spend throughout the year on your marketing. And then that can sometimes get you in a better way in terms of a negotiation perspective about that. But this will be more important, I think, for larger clients. But I think, generally speaking, it's like the way that I try and do the whole pricing spiel with clients is you've just got to be flat out honest with them. I can say, well, look, I asked them for a budget to know how much realistically things can get done. So I can say to them, okay, I appreciate maybe if your budget isn't at this level, but for this level, things will just go at a much slower pace. So if you're happy with that, we can carry on. But it's just to kind of give them an idea that, there are so many variables to this type of work. And it's about getting them to be on the same page as you from the get-go. And I feel like that's what I found to be easier when landing clients, is being able to at least build up a rapport with them and be transparent from the beginning and say to them, well, look, there are loads of variables. If your budget is like less than something that I would have associated with being able to do some good work each month that will thread the needle much faster for that particular niche, I just got to be honest with them and say, look, if your budget is what it is, then it will take you a lot longer. But, that doesn't mean we can't still get some good results. So often saying these kinds of things helps to kind of get a client to be a bit more sure about things as well. And of course, SEO is something that takes time. So they need to understand that. And, any clients that I have on board, they understand what SEO is. They understand that it takes time, because that just helps, preserve me and in terms of preserving the client. Because if they didn't know what SEO or how SEO works, they might come to me after a couple of months and say, well, we've spent this money and we're not seeing anything. And, you don't want to have that. It's not like a nice thing to be kind of approached to by a client. So I think when it comes to pricing, you just got to be honest. You've got to have understood how things work and understood what the kind of market's like, and understand the client as well and the people you're speaking to. Because even if a client might be unsure, I think sometimes the way that you handle it can make or break that deal. So just trying to be nice, but try and be honest at the same time. So that's what I would say in terms of that, if it's approaching a client. But yeah, like I said, for much bigger clients, you do need to do a lot more homework about that particular client, because if they're going to try and lowball you for SEO when you know that it's a client that's, 10%, let's say they made revenues of like 500K in the last year, that's a decent amount of money that can be put into SEO to help them make even more money. And I think that's it at the end of the day. These clients want to make more money, but you've got to spend money to make money, which is the classic saying. So that's how I would approach that.
And obviously we all know when you're pitching to clients, if you like, there's probably 2 or 3 of us all pitching for that marketing budget. So you go to that client who you just gave an example of, 500K, potentially they've got 50K to spend in the marketing. So you're going to be fighting with a pay-per-click guy, the web company trying to extort as much as they can for ongoing web development and CRO and all that stuff. How do you find when you're pitching that stuff? Because obviously looking at the company and you're saying, right, they've got 50 grand to spend in marketing. How do you see that split working in general across the board? So if someone rookie, new person's looking at this going, right, how am I going to price this? It would be wrong for them to think a 500,000 a month, 500K a year turnover company is going to spend the full 50 grand on SEO. So how do you look at that and dig deeper into that? What would you expect someone out of a 50 grand marketing budget to spend with you on SEO?
I mean, it's going to depend every single time, but you've just got to ask the right questions, I think. And the more it's about, going into a pitch like that, it's about gathering enough data to back up what you're going to end up asking the client, right? So, I would say to them, well, where have you been generating the majority of your sales from in the last, 1 year, 2 years, whatever? And they should know this already. And, asking questions like that just to kind of get an idea in terms of what they, because, you know, you got to speak in their language. They're not going to give a damn if we're talking about, you know, click-through rate, etc., etc. We want to ask them, you know, where have you made the most money in the last like couple of years? And they'll tell you. And then based off that answer, you can then try and weave in to the point where, you know, if their answer is not a lot about people finding them through their site, you could say, well, do you know how much money you can actually make from people starting to find you organically? And if their answer is about, you know, most of the people find it from the website, say, well, we can improve that and you'll get more money. And, you know, it's just one of those things where you've just got to really, you know, try to speak in their kind of, try and reach the same wavelengths, essentially. So, you know, these business people are only going to be focused about, you know, the bottom line, how much money their business can make, how much they can grow. So as long as you understand that, it becomes a lot easier to kind of speak to them about these subjects, and then just make it as I guess, as attractive as it can possibly be. You know, if you're talking to them and you know, if there's a PPC guy who's also pitching, well, you say, well, you know, you're going to pay more for getting clicks. It's very competitive. You know, not many people actually click on paid ads to begin with. You know, organic is where it's at. You just find ways to kind of strategically convince them that, you know, you're the person to do the line of work that will make them the most money in the most efficient and profitable way. And that's just how you got to think about it. And I think that's more of just, you know, general negotiation skills as opposed to just strictly on how to price things. But then again, you know, this is how you get an idea as well of how you're going to be pricing. Because as soon as you see them locked into the idea that, you know, oh, we might be making, you know, 50% more in the next year or something like that, you know, you'll be able to figure out how to price that accordingly, because you already know that the results that they're kind of anticipating, you can price it in a way that's fair for them as well, but also for you, so that you're able to kind of get the budget in there to do work to get them to that level.
And to wrap this up, would you ever go in for the package model yourself?
Do you know what? Would I? Honestly, I would. But the only reason I say that is if it's a client who's asking me for certain deliverables, as opposed to just like, you know, traditional SEO. It's like over time, we will be increasing your visibility. But if they want a certain number of things, like let's say they're like, okay, I want 5 backlinks a month. I want, you know, 4 articles written a month. If they are telling me stuff like that, you know, I can advise them on what I think is best. But if at the end of the day, they're so adamant in terms of these kind of deliverables, then I think, you know, some kind of package would make sense. Just because if they're already stuck to these figures, you know, if they've heard about links or whatever it is, then, you know, you've just got to make it easy for them in a way that they understand. But also don't be an arsehole about it. So don't, you know, just take their money and milk it and not really do anything. I feel like, because, you know, people who do that, they won't get far when it comes to, you know, generally keeping sustainable clients, sustainable revenues. You don't want to give yourself a bad rep. You want to be an honest person. And I feel like this industry, you know, it's hard for me to kind of, you know, it's just sad but a lot of people in the industry do take that approach where they take people's money and run. And that's why SEOs get a bad rep a lot, increasingly. So, you know, it's one of those things where you've just got to be honest with yourself, honest with the client, figure out the best way to price it based on, you know, the education that you've had about SEO, the things that you know, and just a way that works for everyone, I think is the best way to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, all good stuff, and obviously gives people food for thought when it comes to SEO pricing. There is no right or wrong way to price it. You've got to do what works for you, but there are some pitfalls, as I say. You know, doing the hourly model, you know, I think can work for some people. I think you're personally shooting yourself in the foot, and you could probably get more money for your skills and expertise rather than giving it out as an hourly model. But again, you need to do what works for you and gets money into the business. So yeah, let us know if you've got any thoughts on your ways of pricing SEO. Leave them in the comments below. It always gives other people a chance that are watching to take on your feedback as well, guys. And if you have liked the show, make sure you do give us a like and subscribe. And do also check out Itamar's channel on Itamar Blower. Just put that into YouTube. Give him a check out on Facebook as well. But until next week, guys, we will see you later.